If something appears to be too good to be true, then it very likely is too good to be true. This is Trek PHENOMS on the Movers and Shakers Unlimited Network. And Delta Quadrants. This is Josh Pritchett bringing you Trek PHENOMS, a spotlight of Star Trek Prodigy here on the Movers and Shakers Unlimited Network. Please remember to like, subscribe, and share with all your friends. And I hope you are all enjoying a wonderful post-Thanksgiving Day holiday and recovering from your collective food comas. I know I am. So today we had a lot of huge revelations on this week's episode of Star Trek Prodigy, which was known as Masquerade. So we have, like I said, we got a lot of revelations. So let's get into our review. Go fast. So the episode opens with Dal kind of having a slightly immature, thoughts about Captain Okana, who was still aboard the ship from the last episode. For those of you who don't recall, Captain Okana is a space pirate smuggler who we first met way back in season 2 of Star Trek: The Next Generation. And he's been kind of tooling around the galaxy for the last 30 years, and circumstances have landed him aboard the Protostar. Well, the Protostar is in need of serious repairs after its encounter with USS Dauntless, commanded by Admiral Janeway, in her quest to find Captain Chakotay and recover the Protostar. However, our crew has found sanctuary, they think sanctuary, in the Romulan neutral zone, as they now try to avoid both the Federation and the Romulan Star Empire. Okana points them to a small non-aligned planet that exists inside the neutral zone that they can only get access to by a space elevator from a large, massive tower that comes up through the atmosphere, because the atmosphere has a lot of ionic radiation, so starships generally cannot land or beam passengers down. Meanwhile, Janeway is ordered not to enter the neutral zone by our legendary old friend, Captain Edward Jellicoe. I use the term friend loosely. If you will recall, we first met Captain Jellicoe in the 2-part TNG episode, Chains of Command. Jellicoe, for those of you who do not know, is a somewhat overbearing, very disrespectful senior officer who kind of lords over subordinates, including in this case Vice Admiral Janeway. So Janeway is ordered to stay at a parallel distance from where the Protostar is, and only to intervene if it looks like the Romulans are going to capture it. And by intervening, General Ko has ordered her to destroy the Protostar with apparently a new long-range torpedo weapon. However, Janeway's ensign, Asenka Trill, who has been trying to help the Diviner regain his memories, has offered to go into the neutral zone on a covert mission to catch up with the Protostar. However, Janeway quashes this idea, but it gives her the idea to have Asenka try to log in and find all Romulan transmissions and monitor them and keep apprised. At the same time, our crew finds their way to the planet. They take the space elevator down to meet with Akana's client, who is an outlaw geneticist. This is going to be very important for this episode because, as many of you know, eugenics is a very taboo and questionable practice inside Federation and most non-aligned territories in the Star Trek universe. It's the kind of science that led us to have people like Khan Noonien Singh and others. Also, yes, Dr. Julian Bashir, but that's another story for another episode. When they get there, they meet with Akana's contact, who becomes very enamored with Dal because Dal does not look like any species she's ever seen before. A quick DNA scan finally reveals to us the truth of Dal's origins. Dal, as it turns out, is in fact a hybrid being that was artificially created by students of Dr. Eric Sung. For those of you who don't know this, the Sung family has had a lot of members that have been involved in everything, including cybernetics, positronic, and artificial intelligence, and unfortunately, genetics. It is an ancestor of Noonien Sung's, who was involved in the creation of Khan and the eugenics war. And it was another descendant, it was another ancestor of his that also created a new breed of augment humans. And that nearly ignited a war between Earth and the Klingon Empire. So the scientist reveals that Dal is in fact a human, but he has also got genes from Vulcans, Tellarites, Andorians, Klingons, pre-energy being Organians, Beta Zeds, just an entire amalgama of a Federation and Federation adjacent races. Dal is very disappointed to realize that he is just a science experiment, that he has no family looking for him, even though his friends try to reassure him that it doesn't matter, that they still care about him. However, Dal decides, when they're not looking, to allow the geneticist to activate his dormant DNA from all these other races to see what would happen. Meanwhile, the Romulans have caught up to the protostar and they've tried to take control of it. However, they are locked out of it unless they have Dal's command access. So a Romulan Tal Shiar strike team goes down to the planet to try to retrieve the crew, in which case Akana makes his exit and leaves our heroes stranded. It's okay, though. Dal has suddenly gone mega super soldier on the Romulans and incapacitates them. But then he starts developing traits from all of the other species from the activated genes. He sprouts Klingon forehead ridges and Dorian antennae. His ears become Vulcan-shaped. He develops Tellarite lower fangs. I mean, it's a mess, and it's killing him, literally. So they're trying to get him back up the space elevator back to the protostar, where it is hoped that Rock and Zero can fix the damage that's been done before it's too late. Meanwhile, the Dauntless, discovering that the Romulans have found the protostar and caught up to it, decide to launch their long-range weapon to destroy the protostar. And the thing is, the crew managed to elude and defeat the Romulans and get back to the protostar. Janeway orders the premature detonation of the weapons so that they can escape unharmed. Meanwhile, Zero and Rock deactivate all of the latent DNA and return Dal to normal. And his friends assure him that when he confides that he wanted to be as cool as Okano, Gwen assures him that he'll never be anything like Okana because he's better than Okana, because he didn't leave them when Okana did. Meanwhile, we find out that Asenka is in fact a member of the Diviners species in disguise, and apparently she was his backup in the event that he was unable to find a Federation starship to plant the weapon. Oh, one other detail I forgot to mention, and I will get into this when we get to the good, the bad, and the Gorn. Apparently, Janeway and the crew of the Dauntless know about the weapon inside of the protostar. How they know about it is something we're going to have to talk about. So, on that note, we now have concluded the review of this week's episode, and now we will shift into the good, the bad, and the Gorn. So, what did I like about this episode? And I would also like to hear what you also thought was particularly good, particularly bad, and especially Gorn-like. So, okay, I did like the fact that Ronnie Cox made a cameo appearance reprising his role as Jellicoe. That was really cool. I like the fact that we've touched on the Sung family yet again. Apparently, their fingers reach quite deep into Federation and throughout the Alpha and Beta quadrants. But now, how did Dahl end up way out in the Delta quadrant, serving as a slave in the Diviners' minds? That's a very good question that we hope will be answered in coming episodes. I also was very impressed by the fact that that Starfleet is now seeming to invest technology in long-range, smart missile weapon technology. Not that I'm a fan of war, but this definitely seems a lot more realistic, given what we have seen of real-life modern weaponry in the last 30 years. So it makes sense that, yes, there would be the Federation starships, especially really advanced ones like the Dauntless, would have long-range weapons that could travel over several solar systems and hit a precise target, just like we have now here in the real world. That was kind of interesting. I also did like Gwen's line to Dahl about, hey, you're better than Okana. To be honest, Akana is just kind of a one-trick pony, so I guess we'll see him again in 30 years or something. I don't know. We'll see. Probably that we'll see it before that. But and I did think, okay, that was a really good, if scary, twist that Asenka is, in fact, a member of the Diviners people, and that she, in fact, the title of the episode was referring to her as the Masquerade. Okay, so what I kind of thought was a little bad. I'm wondering, when Janeway says about the weapon, does that mean she suddenly knows about the weapon that can hack into Federation starship systems and turn them against one another? Or is she referring to the weapon as the protostar itself? I'm a little confused on that. If anybody has any thoughts, please do share them. Is this a line that I missed in the last episode, or did it just get written in the writer's room and somebody forgot to edit it out? Thoughts, ideas, comments? Okay, so that was one thing. And I don't really have any other bad things to say. I think overall it was a very good episode. As far as Gorn goes, so it's really interesting. This is going to, and we're going to touch on this a little bit in predictions. This is going to really, this revelation about Dahl, I think I wasn't really seeing that coming. I have to admit, me and some friends talked about this, and some of us thought he could be another being that came over from the Kelvin timeline. If you'll recall from, I think it was season 3 of Star Trek Discovery, we had a whole thing where we found out that there were long-term problems for people from alternate realities who stayed for too long or jumped both timelines and multi-universe stuff. So apparently Dahl is not a being from the Kelvin or mirror timelines, but he is from this one. and he is human augment. Excuse me there for a moment, folks. And it, that's going to make things a lot more harder for him, I think, going forward. I'm not really sure. We've kind of bent some rules about this, but as many of you know, going all the way back to pre-Federation Earth, there were some very strict laws that were passed against genetic enhancements. Earth did not want to see another Khan, Noonien, and Singh. And when they formed the Federation, that became a huge law going forward for the Federation. That, I have a feeling that Earth was not the first species to delve into genetic augmentation or, messing around with the DNA to try to create a more perfect form of themselves. So it's very possible that this is something that happened with some other races in the Federation. So it's very easy to get a law against genetic augmentation passed. But does this mean that Dahl will not be able to find a place in Starfleet if they can ever, defeat the virus that's inside the protostar? Hard to say. I hope he does. I mean, certainly, yes, going back to the reference we made about Dr. Bashir being an augment. But at that point, Bashir had already been in Starfleet for a few years and had, no one had realized he was an augment until I think just before the Dominion War. And so at that point, it was decided that because he was augmented as a child, he didn't do this to himself. And therefore, he was not barred from practicing medicine or being in Starfleet. So do we think that Admiral Janeway at some point will step in and try to, intercede for Dahl, saying that he does belong in Starfleet, even if he is an augment? Well, maybe, but his DNA is such a combination of so many species that he literally is that strange new life form that Starfleet is tasked with finding. So why not? I don't see why they, wouldn't, especially that he is without them knowing it. He is fighting to save the Federation from being destroyed. So I think if, we end up with a happy ending of all this, Dahl will get his Starfleet commission. So we can hope. We'll just keep our fingers crossed for him. We're rooting for him. And as far as the rest of the crew, Merc, our little gelatinous friend who we saw morph in the last episode, is apparently now the ship's new chief of security, even though Murph really doesn't talk very well, and but apparently has a lot with his new changes. He is apparently capable of a lot of offensive and defensive maneuvers that make him an ideal security officer. So that will be interesting to see what happens next. So what does this look like with Asanka and the Diviner? Well, obviously, we're now in a more dangerous situation because it looks like they've got access to an even more advanced starship than the Protostar. Because don't forget, the Dauntless has an experimental slipstream drive, which essentially makes it go faster than warp drive, but what's going to happen, I'm sure they're going to try to get their hands on the virus inside the Protostar and use it to destroy the Federation with their twisted logic and everything. But hopefully, we're counting on it, fingers crossed, our crew is going to prevail and defeat them. So that remains to be seen. So I think we have 5 or 6 more episodes left in this season, and I guess we will know more as we go ahead. So in the meantime, as I said before, please do like, share, and subscribe to Movers and Shakers Unlimited. If you have a comment, please leave it here or reach out to me on my Facebook page, Josh Pritchett Jr., or through the Northern Virginia Star Trek Meetup organization at meetup.org. where I am still the ranking senior officer. Also, my book, Bigfoot No Tales of the Supernatural, is still available on Amazon and Kindle if you are interested in that. And that brings us to the end of another review. But next week, I will be having a surprise guest joining me to do this show. And going forward, we have a number of surprise guests who will be joining us. So with all that, I hope you all had a wonderful holiday and that you will have a great rest of your Sunday. Live long and prosper. Kapla! And we'll see you here next week. Goodbye, everybody.